Williams is survived by his wife Susan, his two sons Zachary and Cody, and his daughter Zelda. The celebrities around the world, as well as fans, immediately took to Twitter after receiving word of Williams' death. And actor Steve Martin, a close friend, tweeted, "I could not be more stunned by the loss of Robin Williams. Mensch, great talent, acting partner, genuine soul." Actress Minnie Driver, who starred in the film Good Will Hunting with Williams, for which he won an Oscar, says, "My heart's broken. Robin was a beautiful, kind soul. Can't bear that he's gone, so incredibly sorry for his family." Ben Affleck, who also starred and helped co-wrote Good Will Hunting, he tweeted, "Heartbroken, thanks, Chief, for your friendship and for what you gave the world. Robin had a ton of love in him. He personally did so much for so many people. He made Matt and my dreams come true. What do you owe a guy who does that? Everything. May you find peace, my friend." And comedian Billy Crystal, one of his closest friends throughout his professional career, simply tweeted, "No words." And those closest to him, his family, Zelda Williams, Robin Williams' daughter, tweeted a quote that reads, you alone will have the stars as no one else has them. In one of the stars I shall be living. In one of them I shall be laughing, and so it will be as if all the stars were laughing. When you look at the sky at night, you, only you, will have stars that can laugh. She also said, I love you, I miss you, I will try to keep looking up. All right, let's bring in my two friends that do this with me every night, Dominic Carter, political journalist and author, and Andrew Whitman, senior political correspondent. And the late widow said that she hopes Robin Williams, is remembered not in his death, but in how he lived and in so many lives that he touched. And to that end, you know, it was funny, Andrew, the obit was playing this morning, and my youngest said, "That's the guy from Aladdin," or "That's the guy from Peter Pan." Yeah. And I looked and I'm like, how do you know Robin Williams? But it really, talk about spanning the gamut. And if you're a comedian and you're a fan of comedians, he changed the way comedy was done for so many, and the impact he had on so many careers. It'd take us an hour to name it.
He was, as a comic, he held the unofficial title of funniest person in America, excuse me, for much of the 80s. This was a hard one when word of his passing came down, just because his life was so amazing and his talent was so enormous on so many different levels. And I think it hurts so much because of not just the way he's gone, but also the fact that he seems to be gone so soon. Everybody's focused on his movies, but his stand-up comedy, he did something I've never seen anybody do before. In the late 70s and early 80s, he did stand-up specials that were all entirely improv. He didn't have a script. He had no idea what he was doing. He was just working with the crowd, and you know, he would see a prop, and that was 5 minutes. And that's him in the late 70s and the early 80s. And it was the funniest improv routine I've ever seen anybody do.
And a lot of things, too. It wasn't all toilet humor. He mixed politics with pop culture and everything in between.
And then just like 6 years later, he did an evening at the Met. He was the first comic to ever play at the Metropolitan Opera House in New York City. And it was exactly the opposite kind of routine. It was entirely scripted. It was not improv at all. He knew exactly what he was going to do. And it was one of the funniest stand-up routines I've ever seen. I mean, to be able to do both and master both is just so much talent.
Yeah.
So much talent. And I hope he's remembered for more than just his movies, because he was a legendary stand-up comic.
You know, you say to a generation, Nanu Nanu, they have no idea what you're talking about. For the Mork and Mindy was his first real explosion.
Happy Days.
Right, Happy Days, exactly.
Happy Days.
And then obviously its own show, and then really so many different things, Dominic, from heavy drama to comedy to kid stuff to dark stuff to as Andrew said, all different kind of stuff on the stage. But he also did a lot of things that people you know, may not put together. But when there was, you know, when the drives to try and end AIDS here, he and Whoopi Goldberg and Billy Crystal did that, right?
That's
and when it came to the military, nobody did more stuff with the USO, you know, after the Bob Hope generation than Robin Williams. They did so many different things in a life.
There were those of us that would tune in, looking forward to once a week to Mork and Mindy, to see Robin Williams. What was this crazy guy going to do on the show? He was just so talented. And God-given talent. But at the same time, in my opinion, you could always tell with that much talent that he just wasn't happy.
A tortured soul. Yeah.
Right, a tortured soul. Those are the words that I'm looking for. And I just hope that as a society, I want to only remember him for the great things that he did. I mean, Mrs. Doubtfire. I mean, I'm sure most of us have seen that movie 4 or 5 times and still laugh when it's on television now. I laugh watching Good Morning Vietnam when he played the radio disc jockey, the crazy
and
radio
you know what,
disc
when
jockey.
You say that, after it, you said, I don't know who else could have played that. A lot of films, you say, oh, somebody else could have been the actual.
Nobody
could have. Because it's completely without a net. You just basically wind up, let him go, and just laugh.
That's right.
You know?
That's right. But I just hope that this raises an awareness of the problem of mental illness. Seriously, because it impacts Hollywood. It doesn't matter whether you're a millionaire or a regular person.
I heard somebody today, Dominic, say, I can't believe he'd killed himself. The guy had everything, and people don't get it. It's not. It's an illness, and it's one of those few remaining illnesses. We've done so much better as a society. Where I heard somebody say this today: if you have cancer and you have chemo, people. It's not like, oh my God, they stay away anymore, thankfully. People embrace it, and there's so many different things. Autism doesn't have the stigma. But if you say depression, I mean, part of me, you know, has always been Neanderthal-ish about, it's like, hey, we all got problems, toughen up a little bit. And it was such a backward way of looking at this. It is an illness and a disease, you know?
It's not a regular depression. You could have all the gifts that God could give to someone, and yet you don't see it that way. It's a clinical diagnosis, and you just see the negative, and oftentimes, and I'm sure this happened to Mr. Williams, they spend so much time alone, they don't want to be around anyone else, and so he went from enormous highs to enormous lows, and he had tremendous finance. You know, one of the greatest misconceptions, people assume that, like us, that because you're on television, you have a lot of money, or because that's just not so. And you know, he went through those 2 divorces, and apparently it destroyed him financially as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't want to leave this, Andrew, without getting just real quickly around here some of those films and performances that were your favorite. For me, you know, World According to Garp. People forget that. Great book, but a terrific movie. And he did everything there. He was funny. There was the poignant moments. There was the painful moments. You know, Dead Poets Society, a terrific film here. Good Will Hunting, we already mentioned. You know, sure, he could he could emote a little too much and go overboard. But you know what? I said to Dominic, there was a few roles here where you couldn't imagine anyone else doing it.
I went through just my collection of movies that I have at home, and The Birdcage, a great movie. He intentionally played I mean, they were a gay couple, but he played the straight role. I mean, Nathan Lane was the manic, over the top, and that was Robin Williams' choice. He read the script, and they wanted to give him Nathan Lane's part, and he said, actually, I think it's more interesting if I try to play this role instead. Aladdin, obviously, just what he was able to do, improvising everything.
Just the voice, right?
In the booth there. Apparently it was supposed to be like a 10-minute recording session that lasted hours and hours. And then one that people might not know, The Fisher King with Jeff Bridges.
Yeah.
That was a Terry Gilliam movie from back in the 80s. It was dark and serious, but he also had a chance to be manic and endearing in the whole thing, and just it's just a wonderful film.
And you did and when you were watching the movie, what was real, what was in his head, and he really pulled it off. Dominic, real quick, anything that jumped out to you?
Definitely Mrs. Doubtfire. I mean, when you think about it, he had me believing that he was actually the female maid with the family. And then I'll never forget the scene when they go out to dinner, and he gets drunk. We're looking at it right now, and he gets drunk, and he forgets to stay in character as the woman, and then starts acting out as a man. It was just hilarious. And as you said, Richard, there's only one person that could have played that role,
and
Robin
apparently,
Williams.
sadly.
They lined up to do a sequel to Mrs. Doubtfire after all these years, and apparently that's going to be scrubbed now.
Absolutely. As for many reasons, there was only one Robin Williams. All right. When we come back, we will come back to our normal format here and talk a lot about both some of the issues and also some of the developments here. If you think Atlantic City's had tough times, wait till we tell you what just went bust here. What was thought to be, the big comeback for AC now says it will shut its doors. We'll talk about that after this.